Hi, everybody, and welcome to our industry update. Thanks for joining us for our first June update. We appreciate you getting on. Please make sure to mute your lines and use the chat feature. We are recording and we'll send this out at the end and post it out on our website. With that, I'm going to turn this over to Melissa to give you her lovely views for this week.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to put on my John Longstreet hat for 1 minute since he's not here. You all probably know this. If you are media, this is not the call for you. So please disconnect at this time. And I would be happy to chat with any media representatives after the call today. So if you are part of the media, this is not the call for you. And so with that, let's jump right in. I actually thought like, oh, we're going to do these calls every 2 weeks, so they're going to be super fast. And then I worked on the PowerPoint today, and we've got lots to talk about. So we'll start with probably the reason most of you are here today, which is the RRF, the Restaurant Revitalization Fund Grant Program. Months ago, maybe 2 months ago, at my webinar, I told you all, if you want an RRF, you need to apply as soon as possible. And if you don't apply on the first day, you're probably not going to get an RRF. And now we're finding out that even those who applied on the first day are still probably not going to get an RRF, which also tied into the second half of my warning, which was don't not apply for a PPP because you think you're going to get an RRF, because you're probably not. And so I'm hoping that you all heeded my advice, because the RRF is already out of money and the PPP is over. So I hope that you all listened to my sound advice a couple months ago. So here's where we are. As of last week, there were over 362,000 applications requesting $75 billion for the RRF. That, as you all know, is a lot of money considering there was only $28.6 billion allocated to it. 208,000 of those are priority access, which, as you all know, was the minority, the economically disadvantaged, women-owned and veteran-owned businesses. So of the 362,000, 208,000 were priority access. And if all of those priority access are approved, it will take up almost the entirety of that $28.6 billion. The question that I'm getting is, do I really believe all 208,000 priority access applications are truly priority access? I think that everybody is honest, and I would hope for that to be the case, but there are probably some people that might have switched ownership of their business in the last couple months to a veteran or to a woman to apply. And of course, that would make them ineligible because you had to have done that back before 2019. But it does look like, for the most part, all $28.6 billion is going to be taken up by those priority access applications. A few of you might see yourself becoming eligible if you applied immediately on day one, but as they're working through applications, it definitely looks like almost everybody who applied, if they're not priority access, will not receive RRF funding under the current $28.6 billion. It is taking them longer to process the applications that they have received. So before it was, I think, 8 to 10 business days. It's now taking up to 14 business days. So if you applied and were not priority access, they didn't start reviewing your applications until the week of the 24th, which means if you hear anything, it probably will not be until next week, if you hear anything. So what's the problem? As we all know, we need more funding. We needed $120 billion. They gave us 28.6. It is now clearer than ever that there's not enough. You have got to reach out to your congressperson. I've said this on another call, on another topic before. If you haven't done it already, you're running behind, because we need at least probably $60 to $70 billion allocated. We expect legislation to be introduced this week, allocating $60 to $70 billion to the RRF to refund it. But this is our problem right now. We are going to have plenty of Democrats that will support it, but most of our Republican delegation is saying we have given away so much money. COVID is now over. We're going through the other side. We shouldn't allocate any more money. So to get more funds, it's not going to be easy and it's not going to be quick. So even if we get the funds, we're probably a few months away from that, and we will not get the funds unless we get the entirety of Pennsylvania's congressional delegation on board. So you should have received, and I think somebody will throw it in the chat, an action plan in terms of starting to sign on to a petition saying that we need more RRF funds. And then secondly, this week, once the bill is introduced, we will start a huge grassroots campaign at the federal level asking for more of those funds. We said this all along, that the analogy that was used that I stole from our national association was, it's like playing musical chairs and the music stopped and there was only one chair for about 40 people in the room. So we need to drive that urgency to Congress. We need to let them know that just because mitigation is ending and we're getting vaccinated doesn't mean that we as an industry are back to normal. It is going to take us years to recover. So please sign on to that petition and stay tuned to the daily update. As soon as we get that grassroots action together, we will be sending letters to our congressional delegation. We will be setting up meetings with our congressional delegation. And more than anything else, we need to talk to the Republicans in our congressional delegation and urge them to support additional funding. And like I said, this is not one of those, I mean, even if you think about the P3, once upon a time, we had the first round of P3 and it took us about 7 months to get a second round. So these funds are not going to come quickly if we get them at all. So please don't bank on these. If you get them, it's going to be phenomenal. It's going to be exciting, but don't plan your business around the RRF at this time. So that's my sad RRF update. But like I said, this is our top priority at the federal level to get more funds into that for all of you. We did get some updated EEOC vaccine guidance. It's not all that different than what we educated you on before, and I will spend a little bit of time later going into the masking. You are permitted to require your employees to be vaccinated. You are permitted as an employer to do that. You have the ability to require proof of vaccination. So you can ask your employees to show that they got vaccinated. If you want to keep a copy of their vaccine card, you need to keep it in a safe and secured place, just like you do any type of other medical information. But you have the ability to require proof of vaccination. You can incentivize your employees to get vaccines, but it cannot be such an incentive that somebody who is not able to get a vaccine is at a disadvantage to somebody who is. So if you have this kind of money, that's impressive. If you're saying, if you go get a vaccine, I'm going to give you $1,000 gift card, that would be too much of an incentive, because the person on your team that might be susceptible to COVID or might have immune issues and might not be able to get the vaccine, that's putting them at a disadvantage. So you can incentivize them, but you can't make it such a giant incentive that it truly hurts those who are not able to get the vaccine. But you are allowed to do those things as it pertains to the masking, which I'll talk again in a moment. A lot of businesses we're seeing are using the fact that you don't need to wear a mask if you're vaccinated as an incentive to get their employees to be vaccinated. It's getting hot. People don't really want to wear masks anymore as we enter into summer. So we do see a lot of our restaurants and our hotels and our business community saying, if you go get vaccinated and show me your proof of vaccine, you no longer need to wear a mask. And that has in some ways been a bigger incentive than some of the other incentives that we've seen out there. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, I've got lots of state updates today, lots of things happening. And that's also because it's budget season, which means that the dark circles are going to start growing under my eyes sooner than later. The voter referendum, where are we on that? It passed, as you all know, on May 18th in the primary election. Next steps is it needs to be certified by May 7th. So essentially the voter referendum will pass officially on May 7th or June 7th. I'm sorry, I don't even know what month it is anymore. On June 7th, it's when all the certifications have to come in from the counties. From there, we are in a bit of an interesting scenario. And I did, again, once upon a time, try to warn you about this. If we pull the emergency declaration on June 8th, which the legislature would have the ability to do. It gets certified on the 7th. They could say, poof, the emergency declaration is going away on June 8th. We would be in a bad situation because we would lose some of the things we have now, like outdoor seating and mixed drinks to go. But even beyond that, we would lose a lot of the things that the state can get right now in terms of extra financial assistance for healthcare workers, for some of the nurses that we have working in the field as it pertains to COVID who might have retired and come back. A lot of the day-to-day things, the National Guard, our ability to bring in the National Guard to help with vaccines and things like that. If we end the emergency declaration, we lose access to all of those funds and the ability to do those things. So while it's great because the governor won't be able to shut us down again, if we get rid of it, the repercussions of that are going to be worse at the end of the day in terms of us being able to operate. So what we're looking at and what we're working with the legislature now, and what you're seeing the House kind of start to do, is move legislation that pulls back parts of the emergency declaration, such as the mitigation, such as the social distancing, the capacity limits, essentially saying the governor can't do this anymore. That's the route they're trying to take right now. We do, and we've seen from the governor come out and say, well, those are Secretary of Health orders. Those aren't even tied to the emergency declaration. You can't do that, which, as I've also been saying all along, will probably lead to a court battle of some sort in the future as it pertains to this. But as we work through this, I know everybody kind of says, let's get rid of the emergency declaration in its entirety. And that would not be a good decision for many, many reasons. So we are working through this with the legislature and the governor's office. But if you're running around saying, you know, we've taken down King Wolf, let's get rid of everything, it's going to be a bigger issue than just saying that. We do have to check a few boxes there. Budget season, like I said, June is budget season in Harrisburg, and we're back to normal. They're allowing us back in the Capitol. The legislature is back in the Capitol. They're working on the state budget right now. And to that end, as you know, the state is receiving $7 billion in American Rescue Plan funding. Many of your municipalities, all of your counties are receiving American Rescue Plan funding. PRLA, as you know, has put together a letter with requests of how we believe some of those funds should be spent. We shouldn't bank on getting everything that we're asking for. And the reason behind that is, for the past 3 years, as part of balancing the budget, in an effort not to increase taxes, which is good, we don't want higher taxes, the legislature has kind of robbed Peter to pay Paul. So they'll pull from one fund to balance the budget and then say next year we'll pay back that fund, and then we'll pull from another fund. Now the 7.3 billion is there, so they want to use that fund, those 7.3 billion or most of it, to basically pay back all of those funds that they've been draining for the last 3 to 4 years to balance the budget. So the Republicans in the legislature are not looking at this 7 billion as 7 billion to give away, which we think would be great. But they're not looking at it as something to give away, because if they gave away 7 billion now, they are looking at potentially a $9 billion deficit next year, which, even if we did recreational marijuana, we wouldn't bring in enough to balance that budget. So we are focusing, we're tailoring our focus on how we want those funds to be spent, but nobody should expect that 7 billion to kind of turn into a cash cow in terms of grants or giveaways. A lot of it is going to just be used to balance the budget. And stay tuned as Zach and I work through this over the coming weeks to make sure that we're checking boxes and getting you guys the relief that you need, while also recognizing we might not get all of the things that we're asking for. But as you know, we like to ask for the sun and the moon and the stars. And if we just get the moon and the stars, it's going to be pretty good for us at the end of the day. Next slide. Okay. So many things happening. Liquor bills, I've been saying this for months, they're still on the move, but it's actually more important than ever that we get some of these across the finish line. As you all know, on May 31st at midnight, which I did stay up to celebrate, mitigation ended, unless you're unfortunate enough to be in the city of Philadelphia, but then we'll get into that in a second. Mitigation ended, which means that we're seeing that spark of light at the end of the tunnel. We do have liquor bills, predominantly 425 and 1154, which can include provisions that could be taken away from us if the emergency declaration is ended, or if the governor just decides to take it away from us. House Bill 425 is our outdoor seating legislation that's included in that, among other things. And 1154 makes mixed drinks to go permanent forever. So we can always get our espresso martinis and margaritas for all of time, which I'm very excited about. The LCB is looking at ending some of these things. They're looking at ending new applications for outdoor seating by the end of the month, with you not being able to do outdoor seating for free by September. And then looking at how mixed drinks to go could go away if they end the emergency declaration. So it's more important than ever that we get these bills across the finish line. So we're legislating that they have to continue. If we get 425 done, it would allow your outdoor seating to continue until the end of next year, so December 31st of 2022, and it would allow you to kind of go to non-contiguous areas as well for your outdoor seating. So we are hopeful that we will get those moved within the next week or so. I won't get into the intricacies of legislation, but there's something called a trade list between the House and the Senate as part of budget. So it's kind of like if you move a Senate bill, then you have to move a House bill. So it's really just making sure that we're at the top of those lists to get those bills across the finish line in the coming weeks. And please stay tuned as we go into session next week. We are looking at some other amendments they might put in those bills, such as ready to drink cocktails, which the governor's office is not a fan of. And we're certainly concerned about any changes to our bills that could lead us to a veto from the governor. So we're very cognizant of anything that will hurt our efforts to make sure that the things you have now can continue in the future. So that is going to be our top priority going into next week as it pertains to our liquor priorities. The questions I'm getting second to the RRF questions are the unemployment questions. FYI, if you have any employees that are still on unemployment or collecting unemployment, they are doing a massive $30 million upgrade that will begin tonight. So the portal to apply for unemployment or file your claims will go offline tonight until June 8th. So you cannot file a new claim. You cannot ask for payments for anything. You can't file any of your weekly claims during that time. So tonight until June 8th. And if you were to say, Melissa, is everything going to be back on and working so great on June 8th? And if you just hearken back to how the unemployment system worked for pretty much all of 2020, I wouldn't hold my breath that we are going to have a super straightforward, clean cut reopening of the portal on the 8th. But it should be back up in some form or other. And I know that the legislature is very carefully watching to make sure that it does come back up. So something to keep in mind. The other items that have happened, Pennsylvania Department of Labor has said that the work search requirement will be reinstated July 19th. You and me and the world are wondering why that couldn't be done sooner, why it is almost 7 weeks from now to reinstate the work search requirement. I don't have an answer to that other than it should have been done sooner. So it will require people on unemployment to prove that they searched for work. That leads to the other headache that you're all having right now, which was kind of a headache even before. Everybody then will apply for a job and they'll say they searched for work, and then they won't take the job, and you'll turn it over to the Department of Labor, letting them know that you offered a job to someone and they didn't take it. And then sometimes things never happen. So we're really focused on once that work search requirement comes back, so will the enforcement of the work search requirement and those who decline to take a job upon interviewing for it. Also, the $300, the emergency unemployment supplement is slated to end September 4th. That's the federal extra $300 that's kind of getting people to $17 an hour in terms of collecting unemployment. It's ending September 4th. Few issues on that front is one, we're trying to end it sooner. There is legislation that PRLA supports that we hope is part of the budget discussion that would end it sooner and replace it with a return to work tax credit or a tax incentive to encourage those people on unemployment to come off of unemployment, because if they wait until September, everybody's going to be trying to come off of unemployment and get a job, and they will not be as readily available then, because at that point you will all have learned to do more with less. And so that we're hoping to get that done sooner. If we get a bill to the governor eliminating the $300, I couldn't tell you yes or no if he would sign a bill, but we are pushing it to be part of the budget negotiations to get rid of the $300 sooner, replace it with a return to work incentive, and get people back to work. So stay tuned for that. I know, like I said, at second to the RRF, this is what you're all asking me about, getting people to come back to work. It does seem, I've heard from a few of you that you're getting a few more applications than maybe you did a few weeks ago, that people are starting to realize that this is going to end soon. They need to get back into the workforce, but it's nowhere near where it needs to be. And we still are lagging behind other states in terms of the number of people still collecting unemployment. So that, like I said, will continue to be one of our budget priorities going through this month. Next slide. Mitigation. All mitigation ended in 66 counties on May 31st. That was Monday. When you woke up Monday morning, mitigation was over. There's still urging or saying you should do social distancing. You aren't required to do so. You can now stand at the bar. You can stand 4 deep at the bar. You can stand at a cocktail reception with a drink in your hand and a pig in a blanket in the other, and you don't need to be in a seat. It is everything that was in place in the beginning of March of 2020 is now back in place as it pertains to mitigation. So that's where we are. There is no, if you want to see something, it's not even funny, but I find it funny because I have a really odd sense of humor. The LCB released updated guidance, and it's 5 pages, and essentially it's just 5 pages saying, we made your life miserable for 15 months and now it's all over. So it's 5 pages essentially saying that over and over and over again. So that did end. You do not need to socially distance as it pertains to COVID. You still need to obviously meet spacing requirements for ADA or things like that, but you do not need to socially distance for that. You can bundle people up at the bar. We are back to normal. And also, self-certification has ended. That requirement that you needed to self-certify to have higher capacity that the governor's office put into place and no one really understood, that has ended as well. So if you want to tear down those signs, you are able to do so. So that has all ended. Masking is still in place, the universal masking, which I will go over again because I know there's a lot of confusion about the masking piece of all of this. That will stay in place until 70% of the population is vaccinated. And that is 2 weeks after your second shot of Moderna or Pfizer, or 2 weeks after your 1 shot of J&J. So it's not 70% that have gotten first shot, not 70% that got second, it's 70% that are considered fully vaccinated. The state believes we're going to hit that mark on June 28th. That is when they're saying the masking mandate will end. If we hit it earlier, the masking mandate will end earlier, which then leads to your question of, well, the CDC says that we don't need to wear masks anymore, so why do we have a masking mandate in place? It is for those that are not vaccinated. So if there is somebody that is not vaccinated, they still need to wear a mask until June 28th, or unless we hit 70% earlier. And there are still requirements for you to wear masks in other places, public transportation, hospitals. Those masking requirements could continue for the foreseeable future until the CDC makes that change. But right now, in terms of masking everywhere else, we're looking at June 28th, if not earlier. You are not, and I'll say this 16 times before the month is done, you are not required to enforce the mask. It is not your job for your guests when they come in to say, and they're not wearing a mask, for you to say, let me see your vaccination card. You can, you have the right to do so, but you will not be required to enforce that. And I've said this before, if there is somebody without a mask, the assumption is that they are vaccinated. If there is somebody without a mask and they are not vaccinated, then they're kind of dumb because they could get COVID. And we've seen many people die from COVID. But that's their decision to be dumb, not your decision to require it. So the LCE, Department of Ag, is not enforcing it. For your employees, again, it is being used as an incentive. If your employees are vaccinated, they do not need to wear a mask at work. You might still want a policy where they remain masked, and that's entirely up to you. But you do not, if your employees are vaccinated, then they do not need to wear a mask, which, as I said, I know a lot of people are using it as an incentive to have their employees get vaccinated so they don't have to wear masks during the summer, which is when we were all miserable and you couldn't wear glasses without them fogging up. So that's kind of where we are in the masking, but I'm happy to answer any other questions if you throw them in the chat, because I know it has been confusing for a lot of you. I know you've had a lot of guests that have made your lives difficult over this. The assumption on Ag and LCE is that if somebody's not wearing a mask, they're vaccinated, and it's not your job to make sure your guests are vaccinated. So Philadelphia, it's a few weeks ago when Dr. Farley resigned, we had so many conversations with the city of Philadelphia and said, wouldn't this be a great opportunity for you to just align with the state and admit that maybe you didn't do this so well? And they said no. They say no to us a lot. They're still saying no. But last week, Philadelphia did announce that capacity limits will end today for events. The Phillies game is going to be packed. The Sixers game is going to be packed. All capacity limits for private events, public events, restaurants, museums, gyms, all the capacity limits will end in Philadelphia today. You still they're still encouraging social distancing, but those standards that you had to have in place, your plexiglass that you all spent all that money in, that Philadelphia said you could use, and then they said that you couldn't use, and then they said maybe you can use it. All of that can go away. I don't think we can burn plexiglass, but we'll have to figure out something to do with it. But indoor masking is going to continue in Philadelphia for the foreseeable future. They are still saying that your employees, for our servers that are inside, they're still, as far as we know, the masking and the face shield requirement are still in place. We're hoping to have a conversation with them about that this Friday. And then, of course, you will still turn into a pumpkin if you stay out past 11 p.m. in Philadelphia. So the last call continues to remain in effect in Philadelphia. So 11 p.m. is last call for drinks and food, and then you have to close by midnight. No, there's no rhyme or reason to it other than I guess they just want everybody to get a good night's sleep in Philadelphia. The next date for changes is June 11th. I would presume the 11 p.m. last call will end on June 11th. And in typical Philadelphia form, they said, we'll think about the masking requirement, but we won't commit to anything, which is pretty much what Philadelphia has been saying about everything for the last 15 months. But the next date for relaxed mitigation in Philadelphia will be June 11th. And then, of course, for my Allegheny County friends, your county executive made a really smart decision and Department of Health decision last year and continue to align with the state, which is great news for all of you. Just don't rub it in the face of our friends from Philadelphia who continue to be mitigated more than anybody else. I think I'm at the end. And if you're in Lancaster, we have our roundtable at 2 o'clock today, and I will be there. So come visit us in Lancaster at 2 p.m. if you're able to. And then Hope, I think you can take it away.
I'll take it away. We will be returning to in-person chapter meetings, so please check out where these meetings will be held. Go to our calendar of events and register. We'd love to see your faces out at these meetings. And Northeastern will be hosting a chapter baseball night, which will be raising funds for the Educational Foundation. So please, if you're in that area and you like baseball, please come out and get some tickets and enjoy a night out. We'll be hosting a variety of different...
Hope,
what?
Gubernatorial candidate Lou Barletta is going to be stopping by the Northeastern chapter baseball night, if that's an incentive.
Ooh, quick fun fact. I didn't know that. We are hosting a variety of different webinars this month besides Melissa's update. Next week, we will be talking again about navigating the legal challenges of mandating vaccines in your establishment. So examining the legal and the employee relations to consider if you are going to look to mandate that. So please join us. It'll be a quick 30-minute webinar next week with Post and Shell, and they will be coming back for a repeat webinar hosting on the next day to talk about salary thresholds coming up this year. So I know many of you have questions on this. They'll be examining the specific parameters of the DLI's regulations and the impact on employers. So please come and check those out. We will be recording them though if you aren't able to attend. And then on the 16th, we will have United Healthcare joining us to talk to everyone a little bit about the individual and family plans that are available through their program. So they will be talking at the beginning of the update on the 16th. And then on the 23rd, we are going to have the NRA joining us to talk a little bit about a new application that they have developed with Workmark. It's called ServSafe Ops. It's empowering winning habits. So it's a new app, it's a new tool to help you with ensuring your staff is working through the standard operation procedures that you have and helping with your training procedures. Next slide. Again, our job board is up and running, so please make sure to put your jobs out there. We are going to be actively working on a campaign over the next few weeks to promote the job board out and talk about the jobs and the opportunities that are available in our industry. So please don't miss out on that opportunity to get your work, your job positions out on our job board. And again, as I said, on the 16th, United Healthcare will be coming to talk a little bit more about these individual and family plans. These are great opportunities for your employees to take advantage of insurance, and there's no employer participation requirement. So it's a great way for them to get insurance. And as always, our classes are now up, to capacity. We're able to take as many as possible. So please make sure your employees, when you have someone certified at your facility, ServSafe programs can be taken remotely or in the classroom. We have the information out on our website with our full schedule. And the ServSafe dining commitment we will also be talking about on the 23rd of June, along with ServSafe Ops. It's a great way to provide customers with the opportunity to know that you are taking their safety and your employees' safety and food safety very seriously. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Melissa. Doesn't look too bad.
Okay, I'm ready. First question, do we know Congressman Fitzpatrick's position on replenishing the RRF? Susan, that's a good question because he's the exception to the Republican rule. He is actually going to be one of the prime sponsors of the replenishment for the RRF. So he continues to be very committed to that replenishment. Like I said, we're looking, it sounds like between $60 to $70 billion is going to be the ask. But Congressman Fitzpatrick does support replenishment. He will vote for replenishment. The rest of, like I said, the Republican delegation, I would urge you to reach out to. And I knew this question was going to come. So what's the status of various lawsuits challenging the RRF distribution plan on equal protection grounds? I believe that a Texas district court and a Sixth Circuit issued injunctions about allocation of funds to favored groups. John, that is true. And they did. And we're still kind of waiting to see how that will shake out in terms of if it will stop the SBA from releasing any funds to priority groups until that gets finalized, which we expect the Supreme Court is going to have to weigh in on. So currently with the injunction, they cannot distribute any of those funds. So you're right. If they do decide that you cannot have the priority groups in place, that could change the allocation or distribution of the RRF. But it is going to, of course, in the end of the day, be in the hands of the Supreme Court. So that could also hold up the allocation or distribution of them to anyone until it gets figured out. So we are looking for updated guidance from our legal team at the national associations, which we have not gotten yet. So as soon as we get that, we will get that information out to all of you. Let's see. We are concerned about losing our outdoor seating, which we have under the temporary extension of premises. Do you recommend we post the placard now for permanent extension to start the 30-day posting requirement running in case the legislation extending the emergency period does not pass? We're concerned about losing our seating and having to wait 30 days for a permanent extension of premise. So this is where this could all change. I don't think any of you need to apply for a permanent extension yet, because we do have a little bit of time. One, of course, if the legislation passes, we're good till the end of next year. If it doesn't pass, which it will pass, I will question my ability to do my job if it doesn't pass. But worst case scenario, the LCB is going to allow you to continue to do it until September. Now, you won't be able to apply for an additional extension after the end of the month, is what they're thinking of. At the end of June, you wouldn't be able to apply again. But if you've already applied, that would continue until September. So if all else fails and we need you to apply for a permanent extension, we will know that after June. So I wouldn't say that anybody needs to do anything right now to extend, because even if we fail at getting the extension till the end of next year, we do have a few months to work through the issues or even still get legislation passed. So I wouldn't worry about it now. But we're definitely using the fact that the LCB will not be accepting applications at the end of this month as an incentive to tell legislators we need to get the bill passed. So, and that's how we're going about it. Understand PA mask rules no longer required for anyone after 6/28. However, restaurants still have to comply with OSHA, which defers to CDC guidelines. CDC still says masks necessary unless vaxxed. Can you comment on that? That is true, and that could change. So while Pennsylvania, the question is going to be, OSHA is deferring to CDC. CDC, I think, is going to go the route of once you hit 70%, you don't need masks at all, that they are going to align in that way. But yes, on the OSHA front, if somebody is still not vaccinated, they're still saying you need masks, but we are expecting further clarification from the Department of Health and probably from the CDC before we get to that point. As we said before, when Pennsylvania still had the mask requirement, we commented that we thought the CDC was going to relax masking before Pennsylvania did, which is what happened. So I think we should look to see if the CDC relaxes the mask requirement and aligns with the 70% rule, which is a rule that almost every state is following if they still have a mask requirement in place. So stay tuned for that, and we will provide more information. And OSHA is aligning with CDC. I know that was a concern many of you had, because CDC relaxed the masking, and then everybody said, well, what's OSHA going to do? And OSHA took an extra time to basically say, we'll do what the CDC tells us to do. So stay tuned for that, but I do expect that it will align at the end of the day, and if it doesn't, we'll get clarification on that front. A follow-up of what happens when the RRF fund runs out of money. As I mentioned, we need to be pushing our congressional delegation to vote for more funds. The bill should be introduced this week, but we need to get our congressional delegation, Senator Casey, Senator Toomey especially, to support allocating more funds to the RRF. A business wants to require that guests be vaccinated. What's your advice on messaging in such a way to relay that business requirements without getting sued? Here's the fun thing about lawyers. They can sue for anything. Even if they don't have standing, they could still file a lawsuit. So you still run the risk. But there is guidance. I mean, you are protected in terms of CDC guidelines. You are protected by the state guidelines, but there is a risk no matter what you do about having a lawsuit. That's just the nature of lawsuits. Now, will they win? We don't believe it to be so, but I also would suggest that you all participate in our upcoming webinars or look at our past webinars as it pertains to vaccines, because I know that's a question that the lawyers themselves have delved into for us. But I am not a lawyer, so I'm not going to provide guidance on how to make a lawyer not sue you, other than to say you might want to go back and look at those webinars and see what the guidance was there. For Philadelphia, when is a customer required to wear a mask now that all other restrictions are lifted? Anytime they're not seated at a table, what if they're standing at the bar and the dance floor? So Leo, in typical Philadelphia fashion, they release guidance and then you ask them questions and they go, good question. And then they say they'll get back to you on it. Philadelphia still has an indoor mask requirement if you are not eating or drinking. So if you're eating or drinking, you do not need a mask. The question is going to be, are they still going to say that if you're on the dance floor, you have to have a mask? And we haven't gotten that clarification yet. And I'm hopeful that we will have that shortly. I did pull up the restaurant guidance that the city has, and of course they don't mention it there, but their general guidance about the masking is that if you're eating and drinking, you do not need a mask. But there is that question, of course, if you are standing or you're dancing, how would that apply? I would say that they're probably still going to say that you need to wear a mask unless you're seated, is what I would presume that they would say in Philadelphia. But when we get that clarification, we will definitely let you know. I think I'm nearing the end.
I think you're at the end.
You guys are, I thought I was going to be on longer today. You guys were gentle.
Well, again, you can always send us questions via email, which you do already, so no problems with that. We are definitely here to help, and have recorded this, and we'll send this out and have this up on our website. And with that, everybody have a great rest of your week. Thank you.